This is Mac OS Ken.
Warm, cold, and hot takes on Apple shares, another AI acquisition for Apple, and a truly interesting mixed reality move from Meta. It is Tuesday, the 23rd of April, 2024. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Pen Chalet, selling exquisite fountain pens for over 10 years with special offers for Mac OS Ken listeners at penchalet.com/macosken. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macosken. What a tangled web of words Monday from Morgan Stanley. Two sites, Apple Insider and Apple 3.0, ran write-ups of a note from the firm on Apple. The piece from Apple Insider focused more on positives. That one points out that just a week ago, Morgan Stanley said Apple had increased orders for iPhone in the June quarter. Now the firm says it's also seen increases for iPad, services, App Store in particular, and even the Mac. Despite the apparent good news, the Apple Insider piece says the firm cut its June revenue prediction for Apple by 1% because of the strength of the US dollar. Now, the part posted by Apple 3.0 sounds a bit less upbeat, but it kind of isn't. While the text of that note has the firm anticipating slight March quarter revenue upside, they're also expecting a fairly sizable June quarter guide down versus consensus, which they suspect will lead to punishment in the market. But they argue it should not, since relative to 3 months ago, Apple's share price is 12% lower, valuation is lower, and buy-side sentiment and positioning is more negative. The firm indicates two things that could turn shares around, though: a better-than-feared earnings report and guide, and whatever AI announcements Apple makes at WWDC, dropping their price target $10 from $220 to $210, and anticipating an AI-driven iPhone cycle in fiscal year 25. Morgan Stanley maintains an overweight rating on Apple shares. That said, the firm sees a tricky setup for Apple currently, and one it says it does not believe investors necessarily need to step in front of. If somebody could illustrate that and get back to me, that'd be great. Lest you think sentiment has weakened against Apple and Apple alone, the piece from MarketWatch says that is not the case. A report from that site Monday had analysts at UBS cutting that firm's rating on shares of what it calls the Big Six tech stocks from overweight to neutral. Led by analyst Jonathan Galoob, the piece says the firm noted the grouping of Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, Meta Platforms, Microsoft, and NVIDIA has already dropped 8% from its April peak, having soared 117% from lows in January of 2023. What's weird is UBS doesn't seem to see anything wrong with the sector. Sentiment's just gone soft, on the Big Six in particular. Explaining the firm's thinking, MarketWatch says the COVID-19 pandemic set off what UBS calls an asynchronous earnings cycle. Other tech stocks didn't benefit from the COVID-driven boom to the same extent. Deceleration in large-cap tech and acceleration in mid-cap tech should lead to a reversal in stock leadership, according to UBS analysts. Less cautious than the folks at Morgan Stanley, and much less pessimistic than the folks at UBS, a piece from Barron's has a couple of analysts basically doubling down on Apple. That site cites two notes on the Cupertino company. We'll start with the one from Wells Fargo analyst Aaron Rakers. Far from deterred by the slump seen by Apple shares, he advises clients to consider buying on weakness, even if shares tank harder after Apple's second quarter earnings report in a couple of weeks. Because, after that comes WWDC and whatever AI announcements Apple has in store. Commander Rakers has an overweight rating on Apple shares. His price target on the shares is $225. Seemingly more stoked over Apple than that is BofA analyst Wamsi Mohan. Not only is he not worried, he's actually got Apple shares as a top pick for 2024, thanks to the company's rich catalyst path with defensive cash flows. Quoting his note, "We see catalysts including re-upping the capital return at earnings in May, generative AI announcement at WWDC, June, the launch of new iPhones in the fall, iPhone 16, and re-acceleration in gross profit dollar growth each quarter." Mr. Mohan has a buy rating on Apple shares. His price target on the shares is $225. News of another AI buy by Apple. Mac Rumors says the Cupertino company has acquired the Paris-based artificial intelligence startup Datakalab. It actually did that a few months ago, according to the report. The deal closed in mid-December for an undisclosed sum, though it was only spotted in regulatory filings with the European Commission this week. The piece says the company specializes in algorithm compression and embedded AI systems. Founded in 2016, Mac Rumors says Datakalab made significant strides in AI technology focusing on low-power, high-efficiency, deep learning algorithms that function without relying on cloud-based systems. This approach aligns with Apple's oft-touted commitment to user privacy, data security, and reliable performance, as processing data locally minimizes the risk of data breaches and ensures faster processing times. Sounds made for Edge AI, years before Edge AI was a term people used. Mac Rumors seems to think so, saying the startup's expertise in compressing neural networks to work effectively on portable devices like smartphones and tablets is likely a key factor in Apple's interest. More news in a moment, but first a word from today's sponsor, Pen Chalet, selling exquisite pens for over 10 years. I had somebody write to me yesterday saying the code on the site did not work. Well, it did, and it does, but I may not have explained it correctly. Basically, there are two deals running: the starter boxes and the 10% discount. The starter boxes were put together to get you going. I worked with Pen Chalet to put together a kit for people just starting out. Each includes a great pen like the Pilot Metropolitan or the Lamy Safari, a Rhodia tablet, a specially selected ink, and 4 ounces of pen flush, all packaged together and all at a discount. You don't need a code for that. You just need to find and choose the starter box that's right for you at penchalet.com/macOSKen. You might go for the vibrant colors and feel of the Lamy. Personally, I'm a huge fan of the Pilot Metropolitan. Inexpensive enough to try it out, but with a classic look and feel that's great for your first, 5th, or 15th pen. So no code needed. The starter boxes at penchalet.com/macOSKen are good to go. Outside of the starter boxes, that's where you use the code MOK10. Roller balls, ballpoints, dip pens, fancier fountain pens, inks, accessories. MOK10 will get you 10% off of purchases besides the starter boxes. Now let me add one more thing. When I say I love the selection at Pen Chalet, that is because I love the selection at Pen Chalet. 2 of my favorite pens and one of my favorite inks I found at penchalet.com. Poke around. Find something you like. The right pen, the right ink, There's just nothing like it. So read about and check out the starter boxes at penchalet.com/macOSKen or use code MOK10 for 10% off purchases besides the starter boxes. See what they have for you at penchalet.com/macOSKen. And a huge thanks to Pen Chalet for sponsoring today's show. Yesterday, I wondered why the heck it was taking the European Commission so long to approve third-party access to NFC on iPhone. Now, complaints about Apple's DMA compliance from stakeholders may make that approval take longer. As part of the changes introduced in Europe in iOS 17.4, said a piece over the weekend from Mac Rumors, Apple gave third-party payment apps and banks direct access to the NFC chip, allowing for non-Apple Pay, tap-to-pay payment options. That report said that the European Commission is set to approve Apple's plan to open up tap-and-go mobile payments as soon as next month. Now maybe not. A piece from Apple Insider says the European Central Bank, or ECB, is opposed to Apple's proposed NFC changes and has made its displeasure known to the European Commission. Among the complaints, since third parties won't have full access to the secure element in iPhone's NFC tech, third-party payment apps won't be as fast nor as user-friendly as Apple's own. Apple's current set of proposed changes would not allow for offline transactions through digital euro via iPhone. Person-to-person payments are also absent from Apple's proposed changes, and the ECB would also like access to NFC tech built into Apple Watch, rather than having to route Apple Watch payments through iPhone. The letter of complaint just went to the European Commission last Friday. No word yet on how or whether it will affect the Commission's approval process. Well, here's something that stinks. According to a piece from 9to5Mac, the YouTube app for Apple TV is hijacking the aerial screensavers installed on that device. If you're using the YouTube app on an Apple TV and you pause it to go for a cup of coffee or something, the app starts running a screensaver of either generic still images or YouTube thumbnail art, endlessly zooming in, fading to black, and starting over, depending on the state in which you leave the application. Oh, and it doesn't let the TV turn off after X amount of time the way the screensaver built into Apple TV does. All of this YouTube does without asking. The concern expressed by 9to5Mac, what comes next? As of right now, the piece says YouTube isn't showing ads or other promotional content on the screensavers. That said, the site guesses that will change, likely sooner rather than later, and the YouTube app's screensaver will show at least some sort of promotional messaging. It's only a guess on the site's part, but it is a sensible-sounding one. Why else would YouTube commandeer a dead screen? 9to5Mac says the YouTube stunt starts once Apple TV has been paused for 4 or 5 minutes. If you want to keep it from happening, the piece suggests going into Settings on Apple TV and setting the screensaver on the device to kick in after 2. News of a couple of interesting plays from Meta on Monday. One aimed at Apple users and another aimed at shaking up the AR, VR, MR, RRR space. Aiming at the Apple crowd, a piece from 9to5Mac says Ray-Ban Meta glasses have added integration for Apple Music. For those not familiar with those glasses, the piece says with them, users can capture photos and videos of what they're seeing with just the click of a button. They can also use the Ray-Ban Meta to live stream on Instagram or make phone calls. With Bluetooth connectivity and their own built-in speakers, People have always been able to stream audio from a phone to the Ray-Bans. That would involve actually selecting the audio on the phone, though. After the device's latest update, the piece says users can connect their Apple Music account directly to the smart glasses. As a result, you can control Apple Music without even having to touch your phone. And finally today, another move from Meta that is much more wide-reaching. In a huge move for the mixed reality industry, says a piece from Engadget, Meta announced Monday that it's opening the Quest's operating system to third-party companies, allowing them to build headsets of their own. Engadget likens it to a company moving from an Apple system, where one company builds both the hardware and software, to more of an Android system, where Facebook makes the operating system and some hardware, letting other device makers in on the action. They're also changing the name of the operating system from Quest OS to Meta Horizon OS. They've already got a couple of takers. According to the report, ASUS Republic of Games brand is working on new performance gaming headsets, while Lenovo is working on devices for productivity, learning, and entertainment. After 30-plus years of waiting, this whole space is really getting exciting. macOS Ken, brought to you by me, and sponsored by Pen Chalet, selling exquisite fountain pens for over 10 years with special offers for macOS Ken listeners at penchalet.com/macOSKen. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSKen. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. Info at macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.